let's look at how to configure bandwidth control on Zscaler platform. Bandwidth control, as I mentioned, is a function to be configured at each and every location because you are effectively managing the bandwidth per location. So it's a configuration at each location. At the time of creation of a location, you have an option to choose whether to enforce a bandwidth control or not. Once you enable the bandwidth control option per location, it is applicable to sublocations as well. And at that point, you have to provide the details of what is the upload and what is the download Mbps. This is very important because this is the traffic what Zscaler will see from end location standpoint. So you have to set how much bandwidth is upload and download. Even if the underlying connectivity might support higher bandwidth, the numbers you need to enter here is what is to be uploaded and downloaded to Zscaler Edge. So these limits are very important to understand that they are coming to Zscaler from the location, not the location's physical numbers, what it can support. Because sometimes due to SD-WAN deployment or other type of overlay network design, you might have some traffic going to your data center through an alternate backup routes over SD-WAN or MPLS. So that bandwidth would have all of those numbers included, whereas this number on Zscaler configuration needs to be set for what you are expecting to send, upload, and download to Zscaler. And as you could see, the total bandwidth consumed is clearly visible to users once this configuration is set. You could go to the bandwidth control visibility dashboard. You could see all of the information over historic or timeline where you could see how the traffic burst and how the inbound and outbound traffic is happening based on the numbers you configured on this specific setting. From a configuration standpoint, Zscaler bandwidth control is configured through different classes. There are 8 predefined bandwidth classes, and you can configure up to 17 custom bandwidth classes. And these classes are something like file sharing, right? All the URLs, categories, and destinations are part of those file sharing category, or streaming media, social media applications, collaboration applications. So there are some predefined classes, which already most common URLs are part of that. And you could simply configure that to manage your bandwidth, or you could even do custom configuration. The question oftentimes comes is, what bandwidth class should I define and how should I define? What applications are running in my network and how should I prioritize, right? This is a very good question and common question. On first day, do not create bandwidth class. When you turn on bandwidth control by location, set upload and download to understand the overall bandwidth utilization in a given period or point of time. And you could use either a web overview dashboard or quarterly business reports to identify what are the common apps which are being used. So we have a list of category of cloud applications, URL categories, and you could accordingly define what are the bandwidth classes you want to leverage from a predefined standpoint, or you could create your own based on the utilization reports shared in the QBR reports and web insights. Now, just to give you a snapshot of how and what, even sometimes you could have a specific domains where for business reasons, your employees would often access, which are not part of our categorization. You could even manually configure those when you create a custom bandwidth class. Just to give you a snapshot of the type of information we typically share in QBR reports, the quarterly business reports, which is again available on the Zscaler admin portal to download, to check and use this information to get started. So you could see things like your top productivity applications. What are your top social networking applications? What are your top streaming applications? This is a more comprehensive list with all the details in terms of over a timeline of 3 months. What are the different top applications we have seen and what are the ones you want your users to not use much in during office hours versus use more of them? You have a complete insight of this to come up and create with your own bandwidth classes or leverage a predefined bandwidth class. Speaking of the granularity and the capabilities within the rule engine, bandwidth control is a rule you have to create by choosing the type of bandwidth class, which I talked about, and you choose the location from which you want to enforce this and time on which particular time you want to have this bandwidth control happening, and all the regular stuff like rule order, rule name, description, admin ranking, which is very common with rest of the Zscaler policy framework. All of that you get in this policy. Along with that, you choose the bandwidth class as I talked, you choose the location. Also, you can choose the protocol, right? Whether it is HTTP, HTTPS, FTP or HTTP, pure FTP or DNS or HTTPS. All the web-based transaction protocols, you could choose on specifically how you want to do if you want that granularity. And the most important thing is the action. When it comes to action, once you choose a specific class, for example, all file sharing applications or all social media applications, right? Streaming applications, you choose one of those classes and you can set the minimum and maximum bandwidth. So the minimum bandwidth is the bandwidth which you absolutely want to guarantee for that particular application. And the maximum bandwidth is the maximum bandwidth which is allowed for certain type of bandwidth categories. So the way it works is this is more use case driven. What I mean by that is if you look at minimum bandwidth, use this minimum bandwidth to reserve bandwidth for productivity apps because those are the ones which are needed for your business continuity. And that means no matter what, if you want to guarantee certain percentage of bandwidth, use the minimum bandwidth to reserve that. So some of the minimum bandwidth percentage should not exceed 100%, obviously, because that's a system enforced and you cannot go over 100% from a bandwidth perspective than what is available. And from a maximum bandwidth perspective, the use case is more use it for your bad traffic or the traffic which is counterproductive for your employees, which is unproductive, a type of YouTube or other social media, gaming, all those type of applications. You could set maximum of 5%, 10%, some percentage what is desired for your location. You choose that so that always that is the maximum at any given point of time. That percentage of bandwidth is only used for those applications. And the bandwidth control rule order is same as just rest of the policy engine, which is based on the rule order. The first top rule gets hit first and the next subsequent rules get hit later. So you have to carefully choose how you want to do those ordering to give the right percentage of bandwidth for each of these applications.